They said weather duty was the safest job in the sky, just a quiet flight through clouds charting wind speeds and humidity, while others handled the firestorms. But 7 minutes after takeoff, Karina Walker faced 17 drones fully armed moving straight toward the base she had left behind. The others were still in briefing. Fighters were grounded, and she was the only thing standing between a stealth attack and total destruction. No weapons, no backup, just instinct training and a decision that would change everything. She could have followed the order and turned around. That was what protocol demanded. But Karina did something else. Something so unexpected it left generals speechless and rewrote what courage looked like that day. Would you break a rule if it meant saving everyone else? Karina Walker didn't look like a war hero. Her hair was tucked into a rushed bun, and her flight suit had faded at the seams from too many morning runs no one remembered. She moved with purpose, but she rarely smiled, at least not since the day everything changed. At 29, she had logged more flight hours than some of the squad leaders, top of her class at the academy, known for her sharp instincts and calm under pressure. But a single moment had erased all that. 6 months ago, she broke formation to save another pilot whose oxygen system had failed. She brought him home safely, but broke direct orders doing it. Command called it recklessness. They pulled her from combat tracks and reassigned her to weather duty. Every morning since she showed up early and stayed late running diagnostic checks, reviewing weather algorithms, filing reports, no one read twice. Most days no one even looked her in the eye. She was a pilot without a mission, an eagle asked to fly in circles. The whispers never stopped. Rookie. Reckless. Lucky to still wear a uniform. She heard them in the locker rooms in the flight tower, in the silence that greeted her each time she walked past other pilots. But she never fought back. She just got in the cockpit, ran her checks, and flew her route. There was a photo in her locker from graduation day. She stood smiling, her hand on the shoulder of a classmate, now leading a squadron. Back then they called her a natural. Back then she believed it. Now she flew alone. Just a blip on the radar that no one paid attention to. But Karina hadn't forgotten who she was. And she knew deep down that one day the sky would give her a second chance. Dry Ridge Air Base stretched across the Colorado plains like a grid of metal and precision. In the early hours, the wind rolled down from the mountains and swept through the hangars sharp and unforgiving. Everything there had a place and everything moved on schedule. Except Karina. The briefing room for combat pilots buzzed with quiet tension. Men in full gear cracked jokes about upcoming exercises while tightening straps and checking flight helmets. Karina passed by them on her way to the reconnaissance wing, her steps soft, her gaze forward. No one stopped her. No one nodded. She opened the side door to the smaller hangar reserved for non-combat ops. Inside, a single maintenance crew worked on her aircraft, a slim, high-altitude recon jet built for speed, silence, and subtlety, not battle. One of the mechanics glanced at her and muttered to a colleague, not bothering to whisper. "Still stuck on weather duty, huh?" She caught it, but like always said nothing. The difference between her hallway and theirs was visible. On one side, people talked about targeting systems and enemy patterns. On her side, it was barometric pressure and crosswinds. Over there, people flew with purpose. Over here, they just flew. Even in the locker room, the air felt different. Combat pilots moved with a kind of swagger, unspoken but loud. They joked, prepped, and nodded at each other like they were all part of the same rhythm. Karina felt like static. When Captain Mills walked in new young, fresh from a medal tour in the Pacific, he barely looked at her. Behind him, his wingman chuckled as he zipped up his flight suit. "Guess the clouds are gonna be real scared today." She zipped her own suit in silence, fingers tightening around the metal pull tab. Every word landed, but none left a mark. They didn't know that Karina once flew through a lightning storm to guide a disabled aircraft home. They didn't know she memorized the mechanics of evasive maneuvering before she ever took the sim test. They just saw her flight log and her assignment. Out there, where decisions were made in air-conditioned offices, she was just another safe bet, another ghost in a sky full of weapons. But Karina still watched the clouds like they held secrets. And that morning the sky was quiet. too quiet. The first ping barely registered. A flicker on the corner of her radar screen, easy to write off as static or a flock of birds. Karina adjusted the calibration eyes, narrowing. The signature didn't vanish. It multiplied. She leaned forward, heartbeat tightening as 17 new signals appeared almost at once. Precise, fast, and headed directly toward the base. Her fingers danced across the console. Echo 4 reporting anomalous radar activity. Possible malfunction or something else. The reply came back sharp. Systems are green. Can you confirm? Type. She hesitated. These weren't weather balloons or commercial traffic. The formation was too tight, too clean. They flew like predators. Echo 4 confirming 17 aircraft. No identification response. Movement pattern suggests unmanned combat drones. There was silence. Not long, but long enough to feel like a decision was being made behind closed doors. Then, the voice of Colonel Briggs cut through the static. You are to return immediately. You are not to engage. Her jaw clenched. She could already picture the runway lights back at base, the slow roll of the hangar doors as fighters were prepped too late. The drones would be there in 10 minutes. The pilots were still in briefing. They wouldn't make it. She was the only one in the air. She could turn around and follow the rules, or she could buy them time. Karina stared at the blinking radar, then at the edge of the sky. 17 drones. She could feel them before she saw them. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. Her headset crackled. Repeat. You are not cleared to engage. Return to base. She didn't answer right away. Her hand hovered over the throttle. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to decide. But she remembered another voice. 6 months ago. A training flight gone sideways. Oxygen failure. One of her wingmates drifting toward unconsciousness. The order then was to maintain formation. She had disobeyed it too. That time, it saved a life. This time it might save a base. Echo 4 adjusting heading, she said. I'm intercepting. Command shouted back instantly. Denied. That's a direct violation. Karina's voice came back steady. Understood. She turned into the path of the incoming swarm. Her plane dipped and rolled into a climb. The sky didn't look so empty anymore. Inside her cockpit, everything hummed with energy. She flicked on systems normally used for atmospheric measurement, but she knew how to tweak them. A recon plane wasn't built for combat, but it could still dance. If I go back, they die, she said quietly. Then louder to the radio. I can stall them. I know I can. One drone altered course, then another. The swarm had noticed her. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was a threat. The first drone broke formation and swept toward her position like a knife. Karina pulled back on the stick and climbed fast, testing how much her little recon jet could take. She'd studied their flight paths during briefings she was never supposed to attend. But she'd remembered everything. 6 drones peeled off from the main group. Her heart pounded, but she wasn't afraid. They were faster. They were armed. But she had the sky. She cut power mid-climb. The recon jet slowed, then drifted backwards like a feather in a storm. The drones overshot her systems, unprepared for a tactic that didn't exist in their programming. She flipped the aircraft into a controlled spin, stabilizing behind 2 of them. No weapons. But disorientation could be just as powerful. From the base, all eyes were on her radar dot. A junior officer called out her altitude. Someone muttered, "How is she even still up there?" Karina banked hard, diving into a thick layer of cloud she'd just scanned 10 minutes earlier. The moisture and turbulence would wreck the drone's line of sight. She wove through the fog, dragging 2 of them into it. Moments later, one spun out, unable to regain tracking. The other slowed, sensors scrambled. Control. I've separated 4, pushing for more. Her hands moved on instinct mind, already 10 seconds ahead of the aircraft. The recon jet wasn't designed for this, but she'd read its schematics. She knew every emergency override, every hidden sensor cluster, every maneuver the designers never meant her to try. 2 more drones caught up. She let them chase. then dove beneath them at the last second, forcing them to turn wide. Their algorithms adjusted slowly, still learning. They weren't adapting fast enough. The base's defense teams stood frozen, watching. Commanders stared at the feed as Karina turned circles around machines that outmatched her by every metric, but not in will, not in skill. General Monroe entered the room and asked only one question. Who is she? No one answered at first. Karina broke altitude again, rolled into a flat spin, pulled out 3 seconds from blackout. She smiled to herself. Her breathing was tight, but her timing was perfect. In the sky, she wasn't just surviving. She was winning. Back in the control room, the tone had changed. No longer panic. Now it was something else. Confusion. Disbelief. A hint of awe. She's using a combat maneuver Sigma 9. That's not possible. The protocol isn't taught outside elite units. One of the officers leaned in closer to the radar feed. Her movement wasn't random. It was strategic, intentional, and very familiar. General Monroe's eyes narrowed. Pull up her file. The junior officer hesitated. Sir, she's listed as recon support. No combat status, Monroe snapped. I said pull it up. The screen flickered. Karina Walker, former top graduate, Joint Training Academy. Specialized training flagged under Project Nighthawk. Monroe's voice dropped. That program was shelved. Canceled before deployment. No active units. Colonel Briggs stepped forward. She was the lead candidate. Never reassigned. Never briefed. Just parked. Why Monroe's tone was sharp. Briggs didn't answer right away. 6 months ago, she broke protocol during a joint op. Saved a pilot but cost her clearance. Some thought she was too unpredictable. Monroe kept watching the screen. What I see doesn't look reckless. It looks like instinct. Refined instinct. Outside, Karina rolled again, narrowly slipping between 2 drones. She baited them into turning too tight, making their collision avoidance kick in. They stalled for just long enough. She was rewriting the way her plane was meant to fly. The aircraft responded like it had waited for this moment, too. The moves weren't textbook. They were art. Inside the briefing room, a row of young pilots had stopped prepping. They just watched. Silently. One of them, Rodriguez, whispered, I used to joke about weather duty. No one laughed. Karina's voice came through the comm. 6 down. 11 remain. I need status on base defenses. The reply came quick. Systems hot but locked due to your proximity. Can't engage without risking you. Perfect, she said. That's exactly what I need. She punched altitude. The drones followed. She was pulling them away from the base, one vertical climb at a time. Her fuel dropped, her controls lagged, but her mind stayed sharp. Sigma 9 wasn't about shooting. It was about outthinking. And Karina had trained for this in secret long before she was ever grounded. Karina pushed her aircraft into a climb that defied logic. The jet shook beneath her warning lights, blinking furiously. Altitude warnings, engine strain, structural limits approaching. She kept climbing. Behind her, the remaining drones gave chase. They couldn't resist a straight-up target. But that was the plan. At 58,000 feet, she flipped the aircraft. The nose tipped back toward Earth gravity, tugging harder now. Her breathing grew shallow. G-forces pressed against her chest. She couldn't afford to black out now. Control prepare for electromagnetic surge, reconfiguring recon systems. She moved fast, rerouting power from navigation, from diagnostics, from everything except the core. The aircraft wasn't built for this, but the Nighthawk code had taught her how to improvise. 15 seconds to system overload. She watched the drones close, the gap lock on. She waited. 10 seconds. The screen flickered. 2 locked signals. 5 seconds. She whispered it to herself. Now. She hit the override. All remaining power surged through the recon suite, broadcasting on encrypted drone command frequencies. The aircraft bucked violently. She gritted her teeth, held the controls steady, prayed the wiring held. The sky lit up with static. Below her, the drones stuttered in midair. Their signals blinked, then vanished. One by one, they dropped from the radar. Inside the control room, alarms went quiet. We're reading signal loss across 8 units. Multiple confirmed crashes. The rest are disoriented. Commanders stared in disbelief. She did it. One officer said quietly. She actually shut them down. Karina's plane began to drop. No engines, no power, just gravity and smoke. But her eyes were still open. Her hands still moved. She had one more thing left to do. The cockpit was filled with silence. Alarms had gone dark. The screen flashed a red outline of the aircraft's path straight down. Karina's hands gripped the controls knuckles white, fighting against the dead weight of her falling jet. She stared at the altitude counting backward as the ground rushed up. 12,000 feet, 11, come on, come on. She whispered it like a prayer. The auxiliary systems blinked once. Then again, engines groaned, half alive. She seized the chance fingers darting over switches. Control systems slowly reactivated. At 8,000 feet, she pulled back hard. The nose lifted. The aircraft screamed in protest. But it turned. She had just minutes of fuel. One engine was running at 40%. The control surfaces lagged half a second behind every move. But she had enough. Control. I'm coming in. Rough landing expected. Silence at first. Then a voice. We see you, Karina. Runway 27. Emergency crew standing by. The runway lights were a blur on the horizon. Her descent wasn't graceful. The left wing dipped. The gear didn't fully lock. She kept the nose up, breath steady, heart racing. The moment the wheels hit concrete, the jet bounced once. Metal groaned, a puff of smoke shot from the right engine. The aircraft dragged itself another 100 yards, then stopped. She was down. Karina stayed in her seat, hands still on the controls. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes closed just for a second. When she opened the cockpit, she didn't expect applause. But it was there. Rows of pilots, technicians, officers, all silent at first. Then clapping. Then cheering. She climbed down the ladder slowly, feet steady, the world still spinning just a bit. And someone stepped forward. General Monroe. He looked her in the eye, nodded once, and said, You saved them all. The debrief room was quiet. No lectures. No reprimands. Just eyes watching her as she sat down, now wearing a new patch over her chest. Nighthawk Squadron. Across from her stood the officers who had once doubted her. Monroe, Briggs, a few others. And behind them a group of pilots who had once called her a ghost. Now they waited for her to speak. But Monroe spoke first. That wasn't just survival. That was brilliance. Then softer. The weather duty wasn't punishment. It was a test. Karina blinked. A test. Briggs stepped in. We were never sure if the Nighthawk project could continue. We needed someone who didn't just follow the book. Someone who understood what it meant to break it when lives were on the line. You passed, Monroe said. No simulation could have proved what you did today. Rodriguez stepped forward from the line. In his hand, a small cloth patch, black with a sleek silhouette of a bird, mid-flight under a night sky. He handed it to her. Welcome to Nighthawk, he said. This time his voice had no trace of sarcasm. Just respect. Karina looked down at the patch, then back at the faces in front of her. Something had shifted, not just in their view of her, but in how she now saw herself. That night she walked the hangar floor alone. Her aircraft, battered, scarred, but still intact, rested in its bay. She paused, ran her fingers over the carbon hull. The same aircraft they'd said wasn't meant for combat. The same jet that helped her save hundreds. Outside the Colorado, sky stretched wide and endless. Stars blinked above the quiet base. The wind moved slow now, like it too was listening. Karina glanced up and whispered to no one in particular. They called it weather duty. But I was always meant to bring the storm.